It was designed from the very get-go to be the ultimate gunship. Uh, Most of that turned out to be true, but some of it took a little bit more work.
Well, this would have had several advantages over the H model. The H model was all opened up. It had no, you could pressurize it, but you'd have to take the guns off, you'd have to close doors up and all that, and it wouldn't be a gunship. This thing was built to be able to pressurize, fly at a higher altitude and cruise, which is a better fuel efficiency and everything, and then come in and depressurize and do its job. So you can tell it's a big, clumsy airplane. It wouldn't take a gunner very long to find this thing and knock it down in the daytime. In nighttime, they can't even find you. They can hear you, but hopefully you're putting enough bullets down. He's not thinking about sticking his gun up. He just wants to not get hit. So nights are our bread and butter.
We own the night, we like to say. AVSOC does that really well. And, the gunship, I just think the mission was just so cool that's why I wanted to fly it, and that's why I flew it for as long as I did. Gunships throughout the history of gunships have been a great asset to the guys on the ground, and part of what we try to accomplish when we go and support those guys on the ground, which is to protect them from the people that are trying to harm them, and so they get to go home every night, and then we get to go home, and we got home every night in this airplane. We were supporting some Navy SEALs. Originally it was they were taking over this village. They were looking for some high value targets. So they asked us to do a wide sweep around the area, just make sure there was nothing going on. And we noticed about 8 individuals sitting in a little ditch that was about 300 meters away from the outskirts of that village. And we called that in, and they sent in a Navy SEAL team. And as soon as they got there, those guys that were sitting down then stood up and started shooting at them. So 3 of those SEALs got injured, none of them fatally, but 3 of them got injured, and then they asked us to put fire down, and within about 23 seconds we had the first round on the ground.
A little bit of mixed emotions, but you know what? I was allowed to retire. It should be too.
The airplane did a wonderful job for its lifetime, and I was fortunate enough to be a big part of a lot of what it did. And thinking back on them, on the missions we flew, and even the local missions we flew, we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of good times. We had a few scary times, but there's just, after spending so much time with it, I was more comfortable with this than I was in my own house for a long time. So it hurts to see it here, but I'd rather see it here than be, tore up, destroyed. So, but it sure brings back a lot of memories, a lot of good memories, and a lot of pride, a sense of pride, I think.
The AC-130's primary missions are close air support, air interdiction, and armed reconnaissance. These heavily armed aircraft incorporate side-firing weapons integrated with sophisticated sensor, navigation, and fire control systems to provide surgical firepower or area saturation during extended loiter periods, day or night, and in adverse weather.
In 1965, work began on the development of the most powerful air battleship under the gunship program, heavily armed ground support aircraft. The U.S. Air Force wanted to create a gunship with increased takeoff weight and flight duration, high speed, and powerful weapons. For these purposes, the most suitable aircraft was the military transport. However, it should be noted that the Air Force allocated for this purpose a rather shabby Hercules. It was armed with specially designed for gunships modules, for miniguns, and 4 20mm Vulcan cannons. The aircraft was fitted with a night vision system, radars normally fitted to F-104 fighters, an analog onboard computer, and powerful searchlights. The first flight tests of the armed Hercules began in the summer of 1967 at Eglin and Wright-Patterson air bases. By September of the same year, the aircraft could be brought to a more or less normal level, and then on September 20th it was sent to Nha Trang Air Base, where on September 27th made its first combat mission Vulcan Express, so named the crew of his first gunship. The crew commander for the first combat flight was the great enthusiast and progenitor of the gunship, Major Terry. Until November 1967, the Super Spooky, this was the name gunship, but this name did not stick, and later these airplanes were called Spectrum, which later became common for all AC-130s, made flights to provide fire support to ground troops. But the plane passed its main exam in the skies of Indochina, where making its first flight in night conditions it was hunting for trucks of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Upon entering the combat operation zone, the firing operator, thanks to the night vision system, almost immediately detected 6 vehicles, and in just 15 minutes 6 fires were left in their place. The successful use of the Super Spooky contributed to the decision to build new heavy-armed ground support aircraft. But the U.S. Air Force Command did not find it necessary to allocate new aircraft for the purpose of re-equipment, and 7 more JC-130A aircraft, not new at all, were delivered to the Ling Temco Wadith plant for re-equipment. In order to give an idea of the technical condition of those aircraft, it is possible to illustrate the following example. One of the provided JC-130 was an airplane, which was the first serial Hercules, handed over to the troops back in 1957. On this airplane, already in its 3rd flight there was a fire. The crew was able to land the machine, but the wings still had to be replaced. In 1960, the airplane was rearmed into JC-130A and operated for radar testing. The AC-130A was modernized in 1970. Out of respect and age, the crew called it as First Lady. Although it was not the first served long enough, the aircraft was finally decommissioned only in September 1995, thus becoming the last of all AC-130A. The 40mm guns were an excellent weapon against trucks, but the Viet Cong began to receive more and more T-54 tanks along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and these guns proved ineffective against them. In addition, the Communists covered their main transportation artery with a large number of anti-aircraft batteries with radar guidance. To avoid losses, it became necessary to hit targets without entering the zone of dense anti-aircraft fire. Experts from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base proposed several options to enhance firepower, including a 57mm anti-tank gun and a 106mm recoilless gun, but finally settled on a 105mm Army howitzer, which was installed instead of a single Bofors in the port cargo door. Another similarity with naval battleships, the howitzer's fire control system was much the same as the fire control systems of the main caliber turrets of large ships. The aircraft did not perform combat missions alone. The AC-130A equipment could not guarantee detection of vehicles at night, which is why they most often flew together with RC-130S aircraft equipped with 28 intensive illuminators. To accompany the clumsy AC-130A were involved Phantoms. Their main task was to combat enemy air defense. For a combat sortie, a good result for the crews of gunships was considered to be the destruction or damage of more than 25 enemy vehicles. On January 1, 1972, U.S. intelligence spotted the first C-75 surface-to-air missile system near the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The AC-130A faced a deadly threat. So while airplane crews learned to avoid hits from anti-aircraft batteries by simply staying out of their kill zone, the clumsy Hercules had no escape from surface-to-air missiles. In fact, the combat sorties to hunt vehicles with these aircraft should have been immediately stopped, but the U.S. Air Force Command could not afford it. Too great was the effect of the AC-130A. Despite the real threat, the AC-130A continued to pound the roads, making them corridors of death. The gunships soon switched to other combat activities. During the defense of An Loc in the spring of 1972, the aircraft were used to fight Vietnamese tanks. A laser rangefinder allowed the aircraft to provide target illumination for Phantoms armed with laser-guided bombs. But the time of non-maneuverable air battleships was gone. In the defense of An Loc, the Communists used a new formidable weapon, Manpad's Strela. On May 12, 1972, one AC-130A was hit by a shoulder-launch missile. The crew managed to reach Tan Son Nhut Air Base. A short time later, 2 more AC-130s were shot down by arrows. Today, the U.S. Air Force has only 13 AC-130U in service since 1995 and 8 AC-130H in service since 1972 aircraft in service. The cost of one aircraft is about $190 million. The AC-130 crew consists of 5 officers, 2 pilots, an airborne weapons systems operator, a navigator and an EW systems operator, and 8 enlisted men, a TV camera operator, a flight engineer, a loader, an infrared equipment operator, and 4 gunners. Only AC-130JS are currently in service. A total of 32 AC-130JS have been ordered, which are being converted from MC-130J transports. The original airplanes, by the way, are not simple. They are designed to support special operations forces. As for the older AC-130H and AC-130U, they were decommissioned in 2015 and 2020, respectively. Also used for some time was the AC-130W Stinger II. This is a temporary conversion of the transport MC-130J into a combat aircraft by installing weapons, detection, and fire control systems. This modification was armed with either a single 30mm cannon or a 105mm howitzer was also added. AC-130W Stinger II. A temporary variant was needed because the old modifications were already being decommissioned, and the new AC-130JS were still in short supply. The AC-130W Stinger II was discontinued recently, in 2022. AC-130J on takeoff, the single 30mm cannon is clearly visible. Initially, it was decided to keep only one 30mm automatic cannon on the new gunships. The rest of the armament was to consist of AGM-176 Griffin and AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and several types of guided bombs. However, the military later estimated the cost of all these expensive ammunition and realized that they had parted with the 105mm howitzer for nothing and began to equip subsequent aircraft with the good old M102. AC-130J. Already with a howitzer. I think we don't need to talk about the fact that the AC-130J is packed with modern systems of target detection, fire control, REB, and optical electronic countermeasures. It is clear enough. Taking into account the fact that the aircraft of Modification J began to arrive in the Special Operations Units of the U.S. Air Force only in 2019, they will serve for another decade. The main thing is to stay away from air defense.